Welcome to the Debt Rebel podcast, where we discuss the ins and outs of personal finance for families so you can eliminate the burden of debt, create financial margins, and learn a new way to interact with your money. I'm your host, Jules the Budget Nerd, and I have been in your shoes. My husband and I have paid off over $107,000 in consumer debt until we finally threw in the towel and decided it wasn't for us. Throughout our journey, we learned another way to do life without debt, and that's my hope for you. You can learn more about our story and see full show notes on my website, julesthebudgetnerd.com. That's JEWLZ, thebudgetnerd.com. Now let's dive into today's episode.
Hello and welcome to the Debt Rebel podcast. I am very excited because I have a longtime colleague on the show today and a fellow financial nerd. I might be a little bit nerdier than you, Jennifer. I don't know, but I'm excited to have the opportunity for you to share your story about why you became a financial advisor, because when we first met, you were not a financial advisor. You were doing something else, and you have an incredible story about why it's so important to get financially organized and get things together so that when life hits, you can respond versus react to it, right? So I'd love if you would just share a little bit about you and why you're so passionate about the financial world and personal finance.
So, hello. I am very excited to join you today, and have been in the financial world for about 8 years, but before that I was in sales and marketing. And with that, I was trying to teach people about getting their return on investment, so their ROI, from their business dollars. And now I get to personally help people with their actual finances. And so it is really rewarding and exciting to be part of and to be able to help people. So excited to talk with you today. And yes, I am a financial nerd. I'm really more of a numbers person. I don't know if it makes me a nerd or not, but all my life I've been a very odd duck. I love to do, and even as a child, I would more than likely love to pick up a math book and learn than read a book any day of the week.
Yes. So we're definitely very much alike in the number nerd area. So I love when you talk about growing up. And when we were getting ready for this conversation, one of the things we were talking about is how important the things that we learn, whether they're good or bad, growing up, impact our relationship with money as we get older. And so a lot of listeners to the show are parents. And so trying to navigate that, figuring out their own personal finances, but then how to translate that and lead by example for their kids. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about what money was like for you growing up. Like, was it one of those topics that, on the list of do not talk about, or was it something that your family openly talked about growing up?
So growing up, my mom was a single mom of 3 children. And so money was constantly talked about because we lacked it, right? Every time we came home and I was like, oh, Mom, I need this for school or that for school. It was like, she would say, well, let me look at the budget. Let me look at this. So she constantly did talk about budgeting and needing to save money, but she did spend money not as wisely as I'd hoped as a person. But with that being said, one of the reasons I became a financial advisor is because of conversations that I heard as a child in the home when there was a breakdown ever in the financial world. She would say, oh my gosh, my friend lost such and such amount of money in the stock market, or, oh, this bank is not communicating well or something. And I would always be like, what does that mean? I was around a lot of adult conversation and I just didn't understand because nobody was really explaining it. They were just talking about it. So when I got older and I started really being able to ask the questions and understand, I would really be like, they didn't know what they were talking about. Like, they didn't understand that they need to ask the questions themselves to say, what do you mean I can't get my money back? Or what do you mean my stock market account is down? They're saying they lost money, but I know now you don't lose money in investing unless you sell it, because it can grow back if you still have the shares or, when the stock market goes down. So with that being said, it got me to understand investing as different than saving, and how both of them are so important, but one is different than the other. Then when I was raising my kids, I was in a 2-parent situation, married, had 2 kids, and still budgeting was very hard. It was a military family, and we just struggled all the time. We were constantly trying to figure out how to send kids to school and to camp. And this time of year, I'd be thinking about the summer, and every single week, how am I going to pay for the camps, not just the childcare, after school.
Right.
What am I going to do for the full day when they're home? So those are struggles that people need to plan for and understand how to do that.
Yes. So I hear you saying a plan. Having a plan is so important in a lot of areas of life, right? Not just with your money, but being able to plan your time out and, like you said, childcare. And it's interesting because right now, as we're recording this, we're not even quite to springtime yet, but you're already talking about the summer. And I think that kind of goes back also to like the investing thing. Like you have to plan for the long term. But like your budget is that short term, like this is what we're going to do this month. This is what our goals look like, but taking into account the long-term stuff too, right?
Right. Yeah. Not only the long-term stuff, but like I said, like my mom, I'd throw something at her like, oh, we needed, I need, $20, let's say, for a Girl Scout function or cheer camp or, whatever. And that was like immediate. So you have to have that immediate money. Yeah. Then you have to have, yes, your budget for this is what you have every day. You need to pay your mortgage. You're going to need food. And then there's, oh my gosh, summer's coming. Maybe it's a take a vacation. Maybe your lifestyle is totally grand, but we want to take that trip to Disneyland. That's a huge expense. And so you don't want to throw it all on a credit card. As we all know, we want to plan for those things. And then taking the stress out of money is to plan, right? I mean, if you have a plan, immediately, that's a breath. That's something that it's like, I've got a plan. I can handle this. Where if you don't have a plan, it is overwhelming and you feel like you're drowning in debt, even if you're not, maybe.
Right. Yeah, because those things, like you said, like the little things, especially in like parenting, the little things come up that you're like, okay, I have the expenses planned out for, keeping the lights on and that kind of stuff and providing within our home. But then the things that come up with our kids, like with school or whatever, those activities, kind of creating maybe some buffer within our own budgets. So when those things come up, it's a little less stressful and we can say, hey, yes, I saw this coming, because when we signed up for Girl Scouts, like the example that you gave, that those things maybe it's a surprise when those things come up, but we know that they're coming, right?
Right. Always.
Yeah. So I would love for you to kind of unpack some more of your story about just if you could just really share. I think it's such an amazing story. And I'm so glad that we're even able to have this conversation today, because you went through a pretty extreme health crisis when you in this last few years. And so how did being financially prepared, not knowing that was what was happening, but what did being financially prepared, how did that change how you got to navigate that scenario?
So a lot of it, so let's go back to, September of 23, I just had a health situation where I ended up in the hospital for over 6 months. And that was 6 months of not working. That was 6 months of paying for medical bills. And that was 6 months that you do not prepare for. As much as you prepare, and I was prepared, that is something I wasn't expecting. And so with that being said, wills were brought out, life insurance plans were talked about. There was a lot that was thrown at me while I was sick that I wish that I had even a better plan, because I'm young for someone that ended up in the hospital. But these are things that, people can be in a car accident. People can trip and fall and break their leg, knock on wood. That doesn't happen to anybody that's listening to this right now, but it can happen. And as much as we think we're prepared, you're never prepared for a complete catastrophe in your life.
Right.
And when I came out of the hospital, it's been, rebuilding and having that extra funding to be able to build back up and focus on my health. And that is a lot that people don't get to do, that I am truly happy that I had a plan, that I was able to do it. And now I am just focused on my health and getting stronger, and I know my money is taken care of. And I did tighten the belt a little bit on, my will and getting it very specific because, I had drawn up a will when my kids were young and they needed a caregiver, if something happened to me. Well, they don't need that anymore. They're now adults and they don't need that. But on the other hand, there's, silly things like properties I own now that I didn't own then, and how would that be divided up? And then there's also charity if you want to give to charity or, things that you just don't think about on a daily basis that we should think about. But it is conversations that nobody wants to have. Nobody wants to think about their demise and nobody wants to think about their family's demise. But unfortunately, the most important thing in the world is if, God forbid, something happened to you, how would that affect the people around you? And if you can answer those questions and be very comfortable with the answers, then it's an easy conversation. It doesn't hurt to talk about because you made a plan.
Yes. And I think whether you're with us or not, being able to make those decisions and communicate those with your loved ones is such a gift to them because they're not having to guess in the moment and they're able to the emotions and all of that because, you are a loved person in their life that they don't have to go through that and making the decisions and trying to figure out if that would be, honoring to you and what your wishes are in whatever way those decisions need to be made. I love that you talk about the will because I remember I have one, but I need to get it updated because like you said, life changes. So how often do you recommend that your clients update their wills? Because I think it's not a one and done kind of scenario.
Right, for sure. I believe that every time there's a major event in your life, you should think about your will, marriage, divorce, buying a house, selling a house, major events, children turning 18. Those are life-changing, huge events that happen to the people around you and yourself. And then, if none of those things are happening, like say you're older in your 30s and you're not changing jobs, you're not getting divorced, your kids are already older, whatever, then I would say at least every 5 years for sure. Because something could you could have, bought a rental property or something that you don't even think about that you have. And also I totally recommend having a list of where your money's at, where your assets are. So if you have, a small little savings account in this, obscure bank, or you bought a little life insurance plan and, have it all in one place and tell someone where it's at and not just your significant partner, because what if you're together? You're a husband and wife and you both go and you're the ones that know where everything is. That doesn't make sense.
Right.
And it doesn't mean so many people don't want to give away the power of, oh my gosh, I don't want people to know how much money I have or that I have an account over at this bank or that bank. You know what? Put it all in one place, in an envelope, somewhere, and just tell them, hey, if something were to ever happen to me, this is where you find the information. Even if you don't want to share all that's in the information, at least say, this is where you go, so that they know where to go. Because after you're gone, you're gonna want them to, peep under the tent or look under the hood, whatever way you want to say it.
Right. Because there's a whole database of unclaimed property, right? And that's where a lot of these things go. If their loved ones aren't able to, say, hey, I know that this account is available and they can't contact you or whatever. Every state has one. And I'll put the link in the show notes for that too. But that happens a lot is people are able to contact their loved ones. Maybe it's been a long time since they've, talked to them or whatever. And so it really is a gift to have things organized and in one spot. And like you said, you don't have to communicate it at the time, but having it available for, if something happens to you. So I think that's a really good point.
For sure.
That's a really good point. I would love to kind of also talk about what do you feel like are what's a common mistake that you feel like parents make when they get really, really overwhelmed with all of the things? So we talked about some pretty serious things just now, but all of those things can be really overwhelming, not just emotionally, but what do I do first? What do I do next? I feel like there's a lot going on. So what do you feel like is a common mistake in those things that when parents get overwhelmed, what do they do?
I think the biggest common mistake is feeling overwhelmed when it's simple. When you feel overtasked, figure out, first of all, what kind of personality you are. Are you a list person? Or do you feel good if you just write it down? Or are you a person that, there's no good idea to say out of sight, out of mind. It's just not a good idea to never think about it. And then when it does come at you, you are overwhelmed because it's like, oh my gosh, I should have. You never want to have those regrets. So I recommend at least writing everything down and then having a plan and communicating that with your significant other. And if you don't have a significant other, find somebody that you trust, maybe a financial advisor, hopefully a financial advisor that you can entrust with, what your goals are for your money, and having those goals, setting them will help people achieve them. They say, put it out in the world and then it can come to you. Well, if you don't put it out there, it never will come to you. So I think the first thing to do with being overwhelmed is, for me, it's writing it down because that's my personality. But for others, it might be to say it out loud, right? I'm going to save money this month, or I'm going to whatever. It's kind of like I bring back all the time. I talk about saving money, kind of like being on a diet, right? If you get on the scale every day, it can be depressing because one day you could be like, I ate salads yesterday. I went to the gym yesterday. I drank my water yesterday. And you get on that scale and you didn't lose a pound. Now you're defeated. Now you're upset. And you're going to be like, screw it. I'm going to have that donut, whatever. And then you're back into the bad cycle. So with that being said, the moral of the story is don't look at your money every day. Pinpoint maybe monthly or even every other month, depending on your personality. But some people, they see cash and they go, oh, cool, I have all this money. And it's like, wait a minute, you saved it for a reason. Putting it aside, out of mind in that respect is okay, because you don't want to be staring at it every day because you will get defeated very quickly. So I think the moral of the story is to have a plan by just at least writing it down or saying it out loud. And hopefully, if anybody that's listening doesn't have a significant person in their life that they trust with their ideas of their money or even their finances, they need to figure that out, that out first. That would be huge to get that person, that trusted person.
Yeah. Like you said, a financial advisor or financial coach like myself. And so you and I do different things. We're still in the finance world, but we do things, we tackle a little bit of a different problem. So you're more on the investing side and creating that savings and that future plan. And I love to set people up with their budgets, their monthly budget, so that when they get to the investing stage, that you can be like, all right, let's go with this. And so that kind of brings me to the topic of debt. So I consider myself a debt rebel. And this is a conversation I have very frequently with financial advisors because debt creates a problem, right? When you're trying to invest in the future. And so how do you see that playing out with your clients and their financial goals?
So a lot of times, we've all heard pay yourself first. And people that don't have a lot of money are like, I can't pay myself first. I have to pay every bill. And sometimes, to me, I believe that paying yourself first means to get everything taken care of so that you can start paying yourself, meaning saving, to me. And with that being said, sometimes, you're not completely debt free, but investing a little bit like in a 401k or some type of IRA will help you save on your taxes. Therefore, you'll save money to be able to pay down that debt or, afford a vacation or whatever that may be. So you help them save money and really get out of debt, which is fantastic. But sometimes it's also good to have some investments so that it helps you with your taxes. Therefore, you're not paying so much to, the tax people, and you're paying more to yourself. So you are paying yourself first by putting it into an investment account. So not only are you putting in an investment account, so you're investing in your future, but you're also saving money by not paying on taxes. Therefore, it's a win-win because Julianne, your rebel coach of getting your bills paid off and then also seeing some return on your investment in the sense of like, oh my gosh, look at me. I not only have paid down my credit card this month and this year, but I've also saved a little bit and I'm saving money on my taxes. I mean, it's a win-win. And right now it's tax season. So it's something to think about.
Yeah, because I feel like it's like driving with the emergency brake on. It's like trying to save money and get out of debt at the same time. Have some set aside for when, life hits. But then when you're not making $500, $800 a month in debt payments, like how crazy would that be if you were able to just shift that to investing in your retirement, right?
Right.
That can really add up. And so that's something that I realized for myself was when we weren't paying for all of that, when we weren't paying for yesterday, it was much easier to invest and save for the future.
For sure. And talk about a mind break. I mean, when you're paying your bills, it actually feels good, which is an odd thing for people to think. But when you have the money and you get a bill and you're like, okay, I got this, I'll pay this. It is so relieving mentally, physically, emotionally, everything about it feels good to be able to write that check and get that paid. And so I truly understand what you mean about driving with the emergency brake on. You just, it's kind of like if anybody ever drove a clutch back in the day when you buy a stick, you're in first gear and you've got to get that balance of the gear and everything about it is exactly how your life is. You need to get that balance that you can go forward, right? So that's even a better example for your financial nerds out there.
Yes, I love it. Oh my gosh, I just think about the very first time I tried to drive a clutch. Yes, that is, and like the hilly areas. Oh my gosh, that's a really good analogy. I like that one. Yeah. Okay, so I love this conversation. This is so good. So we've talked about a lot of different things today, wills and getting things organized and communicating. I think that was a big thing that I heard regularly, and managing the stress. So having the conversations with your accountability partner, whether that's your spouse or your significant other, or if it's a trusted financial person for you, having that person is really important. And having those conversations is really, really important. But also it helps reduce the amount of stress. So like, I feel like this is something that I do. And maybe it's just because I'm in the earlier stages of my parenting, but there's so many things that are going through my head on a regular basis. Like, like if I'm feeding my kid the right foods, and are we spending quality time together, and those kinds of things. And then you add in, okay, I have to make a will, all of that stuff. Like that, I'm a list maker, like you said. I am absolutely love that. So, and we talked a little bit about overwhelm, and now I'm almost like overwhelming myself just thinking through all of the the thoughts that we get, especially as moms. There's a lot of things running through our mind, and if we're working and all of those things. That what is one takeaway that you would say for a parent that's listening today? What's one thing they can do today to improve their finances? If they were just to pick one thing, what would you say?
So first of all, I would say kudos to you for listening to this, because that means it's becoming top of mind, and keeping it there is my one thing. Is keeping your finance top of mind will make it so easy to do. If you're a list maker, write a list of everything, figure out exactly how much money you're making and how much money you're spending, and figuring out, how in the world am I at the end of the month not having enough money when I'm actually making this much and I'm should only be spending this much. But making it top of mind, you'll be surprised about how you go to the grocery store and you start thinking about coupons, or you go to your favorite coffee shop and you don't necessarily have to stop going to these places, stop going to coffee shops, or stop going to the movies. You just need to start thinking, wait a minute, maybe there's a coupon, or find out if there's a special today, or maybe have the coffee at home, but still meet your friend at a coffee shop and get a water, or think about maybe getting the smaller cup of coffee and saving $1. Silly things like that you'd be surprised at how good it feels to make conscious decisions every day with everything you do. And you just start feeling like, hey, I'm doing this, and it'll feel good. So I think just making it top of mind. If you're a list maker, write the list. It's great. If you're not a list maker, just make it a point to every time you pull out your credit card, every time you open your phone to use your Apple Pay, or however you spend money, every time you do, make a conscious decision. Do I need this? Is this a want, a need, and how I'm spending it? And maybe, is there a way for me to save money on it? That would be my one big,
Yeah. No, that's such good advice. I love that. And that's definitely how in my story, that's how that played out. Was we had little reminders on our debit card and stuff. And I had a system set up for, getting everything paid. But then every time I was like, all right, we had those things set aside. And I love how you said it's not about not doing the things that you enjoy, like not going to get coffee and not going to the movies. It's figuring out what's a way that you can still do the things that bring you joy, but maybe spend a little bit less. So this is so good. So one of the things I love, and you talk about coffee, is you have a monthly coffee chat here locally in Kitsap County. Yes. And so if listeners are here in the area and want to get connected with you, what is the best way for them to connect with you?
So they can find me, of course, on Facebook, Jennifer Zuver, Finance, I think is the total, but Jennifer Zuver. And I have a personal page and a professional page, but both work to find me. And I do the coffee club once a month. It's 1 hour. I do it at the Kitsap Golf and Country Club at 2:00 on a Wednesday. It's usually the third Wednesday, but sometimes it changes around because of their schedule or the holiday seasons. So feel free to just find me and message me. And of course, on there is my email address and my personal phone number, and any way that I can help or ask questions, or even come and talk to a group. If you've got a group of moms, I've gone to MOPS groups and mothers, preschoolers, and other groups that they just want to talk to someone that might have a little bit of information, because a lot of us, we're just so busy taking care of our kids, taking care of our husbands, taking care of hopefully ourselves, but let's take care of the finances too. So that helps us all.
Yeah, because it's a tool to create the life that we want for ourselves and for our families. So awesome. I'll make sure and link that in the show notes so that people can connect with you. And also, some of those coffee clubs, I'm able to join you too. So it would be really fun to just be able to connect in person. But if people aren't in the Kitsap area and still want to connect with you, that's still an option, correct? They can reach out to you?
For sure. And the easiest way, of course, is the Facebook, just because all the information is there. But I am able to communicate with anybody in the United States, but happy to help anybody in the world. I've actually had clients that moved out of the US and they just love to message me, and we Zoom, and so it's pretty fun. So I love to hear about what's going on in other parts of the world too. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's perfect, because we actually do have listeners that are all over. Thank you for being on the show, because you have, oh my gosh, you have a really amazing story and a purpose for why you're doing what you're doing. But it really is simple what we do. I think sometimes we can overcomplicate personal finance. And so I just really appreciate you sharing your wisdom and sharing your story today on the show. But before we sign off, because you're a special guest on the show, I would love it. Do you have a dad joke for us?
I do, and it has to do with money, because I thought that would be so apropos. So how does a goldfish pay for their groceries?
I don't know this one.
With sand dollars.
Oh, darn it. I should have thought about that one.
Yeah, it's silly. So that's what they are, right?
My God. I love it. Thank you so much for being on the show, Jennifer. I appreciate you. And we'll link all your info in the show notes so listeners can get connected with you. Thanks again.
Thank you. It was awesome. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Debt Rebel podcast. Now, if you want to take your next step, check out my website, julesthebudgetnerd.com. That's JEWLZ, thebudgetnerd.com. I've created a bunch of resources just for you. So hop on over, check it out, and we can connect more there. If you loved today's episode, I would be honored if you would hit that subscribe button and leave me a review. And remember, every step towards financial independence is a rebellion against debt. So stay strong, keep pushing forward, and fight the good fight. Until next time, Debt Rebels, stay resilient.